It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. I'm flying solo on this episode. No Alan Saunders. To give you guys full transparency, we had already recorded the episode as we sit here Monday, October 21st, 2024. I go to post it, and there was an issue with StreamYard. It literally was looping and doubling every single thing that we said, so the episode was twice as long, which wouldn't be a problem if it were at all usable. But it wasn't, because it was, like I said, doubling / looping, however you want to put it, every single thing that we were saying. Completely unusable, not even worth it to try to skim through to try to piece the episode together. And then Alan's not around this evening, taking care of some family stuff. So I just figured I would do an episode for you guys because I feel like I have a lot to talk about on this game. Alan at least got to share his thoughts. If you guys joined him for Steelers Now post game, if you didn't, you can still go back, watch or listen to that to get Alan's immediate thoughts from Acrisure Stadium immediately following last night's Sunday night football game, a victory over the New York Jets. So as we enjoy this Victory Monday, what's on my mind? First and foremost, I feel like I owe some apologies. I was going back and forth with people, got a lot of backlash in terms of my thoughts, both about the quarterback decision and also how I felt specifically about this matchup with the New York Jets. We'll start with the quarterback decision. Russell Wilson started this game, his first start in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform. And I had shared my thoughts on this. I think Russ can still play. And I think in most situations, I understand the thought process of what they were chasing in terms of getting more out of the passing game at the expense of whatever you're losing with Justin's legs. I think Russ can still move, obviously not to the level of Justin. Justin cannot effectively play the quarterback position as effective as Russell Wilson can, though, and I think that was on display last night. Anyways, my thought, though, why I felt that way. I thought Russell could get more out of the passing game in most ecosystems. I think specifically within the Steelers offense, though, when I look at the state of the offensive line, and we're going to talk about them too. When I look at the playmakers that they have, we got to talk about them too in a little bit. I felt like what they were chasing wouldn't be found because I didn't know how much more upside there was to tap into with this passing game. Even if Russ was going to get just a little bit more out of it, was it worth it with what you are taking away in Justin's legs? Because Justin's legs arguably had been the best part of the Steelers offense, although that wasn't necessarily by design. Kind of running for his life or not seeing the field the way that Russell Wilson or other quarterbacks in this league would, whether it was turning down throws, not seeing them, whatever it was. Justin just really hadn't been doing that, especially over the last 2 weeks. I think we were going in the wrong direction in terms of his progression as a passer. So that's kind of where I stood. But Russell Wilson last night, especially after the first, quarter or so, I'd say into the second quarter, I thought we started to see Russell Wilson shake off that rust. Once he got that touchdown to George Pickens, and Russ talked about it, former baseball player, talked about kind of like just needing to get a hit. You got to see one, and then all of a sudden the floodgates open. Throws that touchdown to George. And all of a sudden, the offense really started to put things together. The down-by-down consistency, obviously much more there in this one than it had been in the past. Between the 20s, much more effective. And they left some meat on the bone still. Russ talked about that. And that's, I don't know if scary is the right word to put it for other defenses, because I don't know that we're at the point yet after one game to say the Steelers' offense is all of a sudden starting to strike fear into their opponents. But after a 37-point performance where you feel like they left at least – settling for 2 times within the 5. I mean, if those are both touchdowns, this game would have been out of hand well before it was. So I think that it's there. Like, there is still much more to tap into with this offense, and there's a lot to take away positively from this performance from Russell Wilson, despite, like I said, him leaving a lot of meat on the bone. I want to talk about the playmakers, because I think that's really the big difference here for me, is giving guys shots to make plays. George was immediately involved in the game, and he just seemed engaged from the very first snap, which is a big part for George, right? You're never going to doubt the talent, but is he there? Is he present? And this was a matchup that I was worried about with Sauce Gardner, because I thought it could go one of two ways either very south or the opposite, very north. If George got into his own head because of the way that Sauce was getting under his skin or anything like that, I thought that this matchup could have gone sideways for him. And I was wondering what version of George we were going to get. Immediately, I felt like he was involved and engaged in this football game, which is a great sign. And hopefully that continues to be the case going forward. But even just from a production perspective, 5 for 111 and a touchdown. Um, I just felt like he was on another level in this one. I thought that we saw the performance that we typically do see from George, and we're kind of like in this cycle with him, right? But Russ was just giving him chances to make plays one on one, not open necessarily, but he's George Pickens open. Doesn't have a bunch of separation, still comes down with a play, turning 50-50 balls into 85-15 balls or wherever you want to. Notice I didn't even say 80-20. I had to give him a little bit more than that because everybody goes to the 80-20 when they say that. Even the one-handed catch by Pat Freiermuth, just giving his guys a chance to make plays. And I thought the playmakers had their best day. Low bar, I know that we're talking about, a Steelers wide receiver room that we very much want to add to in the tight end room and what they bring to the table. But I thought they had their best day collectively. Van Jefferson obviously got his first Steelers touchdown, just 2 catches. Calvin Austin only had the 1, but he was open a ton in this game. And I wonder if Russ does go his direction more in the future. He had a drop in this one, and it could have turned out to be a really big drop if this game would have went in the wrong direction. But I do wonder if that maybe played into that. Because I thought Calvin Austin could have had a really big day with going back, looking at it, seeing how open he was on tape. And he has been, honestly, throughout the season. But I thought it was his best day. I thought it was Jaylen Warren's best game. I know that we haven't seen Jaylen Warren be Jaylen Warren. I think we're trending in the right direction there. I think we're close if he's not there. The 3rd and 8 that he was able to pick up, absolutely massive, where he like spins out to his right. Everybody thinks he's going to his left and is able to pick up a first down on that play. Like that's Jaylen Warren being Jaylen Warren right there. And then Najee Harris back-to-back weeks. What more can you say? Over 100 yards and a touchdown again in this one. And I feel like he's just really coming into his own now within this offense. 21 carries for 102 yards and a touchdown. Most missed tackles forced on runs this season. 2nd straight game with positive rushing yards over expected at plus 17. He's now amassed 80 yards over expected over the last 2 weeks, which is 2nd in the NFL in that time. So I think that Najee's really starting to come into his own within this offense, whether you think he is the long-term solution there or not. I don't think that he's, I know I've said this so many times on this podcast. I would have picked up the 5th-year option and then moved on at that point. The Steelers did not pick up the 5th-year option. That kind of tells me where they're at. I would be very surprised if they extended him or franchise tagged him. Franchise tag, maybe probably the least likely of those. But I think that he walks after this year. But at least for this year, while we're focusing just on 2024, I feel much more comfortable about his fit within the offense than I did prior to the last couple of weeks. I think that they're really coming into their own there. And I can't say enough about the offensive line's performance. I'm not saying they were great or anything like that, but when you take into consideration who it is up there right now, they're running with backups, they're running with 3rd stringers, they're running, so just the fact that they had the performance that they did, especially on the ground, especially in the second half. Mason McCormick's a player, man. I think they got one there. Especially like I feel like had a good gauge of what he was as a run blocker, but I think in pass protection, he's held up way better than I expected him to very early in his Steelers tenure here. I really think they got something there. And how can you deny the vibes that he brings to the table as well? I'm a big vibes guy, and he certainly brings the energy. It's funny because Alan says he's like a super quiet dude, but then you see him on the field, celebrating the first downs and stuff like that. I'm a big Mason McCormick fan. I think he's ingrained himself nicely already here in Pittsburgh, and I feel very comfortable about him taking over one of those guard spots going into the future. And then the last part of the offense, man, Artie Smith, I think deserves a ton of credit for the game that he called. We talked about guys getting free releases, scheming guys open. When you have the lack of pass catchers that the Steelers do that you feel really good about, having a good OC is what would mask that. And I thought Artie Smith had his best day, probably certainly one of his best days, if not his best day as a Steelers play caller on Sunday night. Big reason why we were seeing guys, running wide open so often. If you guys only watched it live encourage you to go watch it back and just see how often Calvin Austin was open, specifically him. But I thought it was a good day for Artie Smith. Obviously, the way they were able to kind of get things going in the second half, especially on the ground. Turn our attention to the defensive side of the ball here for a second. The other part of this, right, that I mentioned at the beginning of the show that I was very wrong about over the course of the last week. I thought the only path to victory that the Steelers had, and this is why I picked the Jets, was they had to be able to get home and get home with 4. They only had 1 sack in this game, and it came on the very first drive of the game, Larry Ogunjobi. TJ Watt held off the stat sheet. Alex Highsmith held off the stat sheet. Cam Hayward, in that respect, held off the stat sheet. What these guys were able to do, though, was still impact the game, deflecting the ball at the line of scrimmage, creating weird pockets for Aaron Rodgers, making him uncomfortable despite not actually getting home. Still thought they had a good day in that respect. But the fact that the sack numbers didn't pile up in the way that I thought, the fact that it was just 1 from Larry Ogunjobi, if you show me that, just that on the surface, I would have thought the Jets picked the Steelers apart in this one. And because we know how quick Aaron wants to get the ball out of his hands. We know he wants, like, this isn't anything new. This goes back to Green Bay. Wants 5 routes, wants the quick pass game, get it out of his hands quick. And I think the Steelers, as the game went on, because they were able to take the lead, were able to kind of own in on that, make them one-dimensional, kind of sit on things. And TA was able to mix things up a little bit more than they have, generally speaking, over the course of the season. So I'm very impressed with them being able to pitch a second half shutout, and largely due to the contributions of Beanie Bishop and DeShon Elliott, which is where I want to turn my attention to at this point. Beanie Bishop, 2 interceptions in this game. On paper, we said this, probably the worst matchup for him that you would have thought coming into this one, because they're either going to play 6'5" Allen Lazard in the slot, or they're going to play Devontae Adams or Garrett Wilson. Which matchup of that do you like for Beanie Bishop? On paper. This game's not played on paper, and Beanie Bishop bounced back in a big way after a couple, I don't know if horrendous is the right word, but subpar weeks, certainly, for Beanie Bishop over the last couple of games. So to bounce back in the way that he did, what a statement that is for an undrafted rookie free agent to come in here and make the type of impact that he did against Aaron Rodgers in this one. He completely flipped the script right before halftime. That interception that he gets, taking it away from Garrett Wilson, that changed the course of this football game to me. That was the play right there that changed everything. Then he gets a second one, which goes, off of Garrett Wilson, deflects, and he's kind of just in the right spot at the right time. But those plays happen when you're in the right spots at the right time. So all credit to Beanie Bishop in the way that he was able to bounce back in this one. Only going to be great for his confidence and mean good things going forward from this point. So very encouraged by that. And what can we say about DeShon Elliott at this point? He's been their best free agent signing by a mile. In my opinion right now, if the season ended, he should be an all-pro. I don't have a vote. Allen does. So maybe we talk Allen into getting DeShon Elliott on his ballot, because DeShon Elliott has been their most impactful free agent signing. He's been, in my opinion, their best or second best to TJ, just because TJ's TJ, player on the defensive side of the ball. Cam Hayward's obviously up there too, but this is a good problem to have when we're really, nitpicking between these guys, which one has been their best defensive player. But on the back end, what he's been able to do, making plays behind the line of scrimmage. He's just been everywhere. He's taken the ball away. Like, he's done everything that this defense has asked of him. He's kept the lid on things over top. That's another big thing, right? Like, you didn't see that big play happen from Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, guys that are big play threats. They were able to keep a lid on things all night. And again, that just goes into being able to make this team one-dimensional once you take the lead on them and you get them into the obvious pass situations. I thought the one area where they struggled early on was open field tackling, which is something they've been very good at. They were not to start this game on Sunday night. And maybe that speaks more to, we all know Breece Hall's a talented player. Maybe that speaks more to that than anything else. But that is the one area of weakness, at least early in this football game, for the Steelers that the Jets were able to take advantage of. We're obviously able to clean it up as the football game went on. The last thing that I want to talk about, I just mentioned Mike Williams. I don't know where you guys are at with this. I'm not saying he's like a needle mover or anything like that. I still expect the Steelers to acquire a wide receiver. If I'm taking a guess, I think it's Mike Williams. I think now that this game's in the rear view, the Jets now 2-5. They're going to trade Mike Williams, and I think it's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers this upcoming week. I think that the two teams seem very motivated, from what I've heard, talking with Alan, what he's heard, to get a deal done. And I think that, by the time that we're talking in a couple days, we could be talking about what does Mike Williams bring to the table for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we can kind of touch on that a little bit right now. I mentioned the big play ability. I think that's still in there. I think that there's certainly some concerns about where he is physically coming back from the injuries that he suffered. Honestly, this game against the Steelers might have been like his best or second best game that he's had this year. Like, the production has not been there, has been on the same page with Aaron Rodgers. Maybe a lot of that's working back from injury. It doesn't cost a ton in the salary cap. Won't cost a ton in terms of trade compensation. Like, we have 3 7th-round picks. I think it could just be one of those going the other way for Mike Williams. And I think when you talk about the big-bodied receiver that he is, I think he can also contribute as a run blocker. And that's something that I've been talking a ton about, because if these guys aren't going to contribute in terms of what they bring to the pass game, I would like to see them at least be able to spring some and help some out in terms of the perimeter run game and be able to, get on those blocks better than what we've seen to the level of, Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin, and, all power to him for what he tries to do in that respect. But obviously not the biggest bodied guy. So not able to contribute as much as he'd like in that regard. So we'll see if they are able to hammer that out, make something happen, whether it's Mike Williams, whether it's another receiver. I do think that we see something get done sooner rather than later in terms of the Steelers wide receiver search. Finally, I do think that we're kind of coming to an end on this thing. We got to be, right? Trade deadline. If it's not going to happen in the next 11 days, it's not going to happen at all, or 15 days, it's not going to happen at all. So we'll see if something does come to fruition there. But I appreciate you guys sticking with me for this one. Alan will be back tomorrow. This was kind of weird, man. Just talking to myself. Honestly, don't even need to be wearing these headphones. I'm just wearing them for aesthetic, just to make it seem like a normal thing going on here for you guys. But I appreciate you guys watching or listening to this. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. If you are here on YouTube, hit us in the comments with your thoughts on anything that we talked about today, how you're feeling about the game, if your mind has changed in terms of the trajectory of this season. Russell Wilson, how you're feeling about that first performance? Are we kind of valuing it? Are we overrating it? Are we underrating it? Where are we at with Russell Wilson in terms of this? Please let us know in the comments how you're feeling about that. You can definitely come at me for my thoughts prior to. I will take that, because I was there Sunday night. I said this to Alan in conversation off camera, but I've had season tickets since 2019. That might be the most enjoyable experience I've had at a game since I got those tickets. Seeing the 74 team get honored as well Sunday night, throwbacks, great face mask, like everything about that game was just awesome. So if you're listening somewhere, be sure to leave us a 5-star review and subscribe as well. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, you find us there. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Same place that you can find us on TikTok. Again, just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. You find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH, and then, of course, PGH Steelers Now, the site's account, SteelersNow.com. Go read all the content over there, all the written content, and then, of course, the video content here. We appreciate you guys. Again, Alan will be back tomorrow. But until then, thanks for taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.